Without a doubt, AS Como is one of the most exciting football clubs in Italy right now. Beyond the financial backing that they have Cesc Fabregas, who arguably could be the next Xabi Alonso in terms of the manager world. So next season it's looking quite interesting as to who they'll bring in. To recap in this career mode, who we decided to bring in season one, we got Tomiyasu, who's just left Arsenal on a free. I think he'd be quite a sensible player to bring in. Quite a lot of experience, and in Italy he could improve his sort of fitness. Look at the formation, we put Due sort of on the left wing to stretch out the pitch and try to reflect Fabregas's tactics. As you can see there, we didn't make a huge impact looking at the first half of the season, but we were doing all right by the midpoint, ended up in 13th. From what I've seen online, Fabregas's tactics are quite reminiscent of some English managers. He seems to use sort of like a right midfielder who comes in and sort of creates a box midfield, but he does seem to be quite faithful to having fullbacks that do stay in. Hence why we brought in Alex Valle from Barcelona, who has come in on a permanent deal. By the end of the season, the stats were looking pretty decent. Duvikas has scored quite a lot of goals. Roberto was surprisingly quite a good creator. Batterina, of course, was going to be good. Season 2, we decided to bring in Reece Nelson, especially with the loyalties that Fabregas would have from Arsenal. Just seemed like quite a sensible transfer. Alongside him, brought in some Chelsea players, Humphreys and Amogu. Pacheco as well, the Spanish connection there. I think Fabregas is quite privileged in the sense that there'll be so many players that will want to come play for him, and he seems to have a good sort of relationship with young players as well. So this was our starting 11 for the first game of season 2, which unfortunately ended with a 2-1 loss, but putting players like Diego Leone, who's really up and coming, into the team, I think it was something that we'd eventually be rewarded with. But again, looking at the table, it was pretty mid by this point in season 2. Nothing too exciting, but the team still seemed to be growing and sort of developing. It was good again from Bernabe and Batterina. Reece Nelson also seemed to sort of touch down in Serie A with quite good form. Looking at sort of the end of the season, it's a 1-1 draw, and unfortunately, considering that we haven't really developed that far, when the opportunities came to sort of go into a new league, a new team that Fabregas does have a good relationship with, we had to take it. So with a very bloated squad, our new challenge was now to sort of developing players, look and see who we can move on. Birria looked like quite an important player, same with Grimaldo and Reece James. So we did decide to stick with the 4-4-2 that they seem to use at its current point, but we did need a midfielder, so that was our first sort of priority. We went to Amiri and quite quickly managed to announce a deal with him. Thought he was quite a tidy player, seems to be quite good in Bundesliga. But yeah, checking at sort of the halfway point, we'd reached the knockout stage, which is quite impressive, even though we do have a strong team. And yeah, beating them, had to face Arsenal next. In the league, sadly, we fell a bit short there. PSG had to come past us, but I think that's the tale as old as time, where there's a lot of talented French teams, but when you have the resources, it's really hard to compete with that. Checking through the Champions League, sort of form at the end of the season, we had unfortunately just come up short against Arsenal, which isn't a bad team to go up sort of against and go out against. But yeah, checking our stats, much more dominant than I'd say sort of what we see in the Serie A with Como. So I think the move had sort of benefited Fabregas in his career in that sense. I think all great managers do have that principle that if you can't beat a player, just sign them for your team. You know, Klopp, Pep, Fergie always like to do it. So when Terrier, I saw he scored quite a lot of goals last season, had to bring him in for competition. He's quite a good player as well because he's quite versatile, can play striker and right winger, and even left winger as well. So I think it'd be quite a sort of cheap signing to bring in. We of course were blessed with quite a good youth department since it is Monaco, so we decided to promote him. And looking at team of the season as well, 2 strikers getting in there. It's quite confident sort of for the future there. We brought in Gorna Duath, Bentancur and Chukwueze, who I believe all had about a year left in their contract, so much cheaper. Signings like that were the reason we managed to beat PSG on their day in the Trophies des Champions sort of final. And yeah, looking at sort of going back through our sort of signings, we had moved on a few players to bring some money in, but generally I think we've strengthened in sort of every area and at least have loaned players out to keep them growing. By the halfway point in season 3, we unfortunately were second again, but very close, much closer than last time. And it looked like it was pretty decent progression in the league, through in the tournaments, and in Champions League it looks very good, being all the way up in second. Fabio Silva was looking very solid again, as he had done from the start of sort of the Monaco career mode. And Amiri had also done quite well. He's quite a versatile midfielder. Just to recap the stats there, Fabio Silva had done well again alongside Biriath. But it was starting to become a bit concerning that if we didn't sort of beat the likes of Leverkusen and start to progress in the Champions League, which we luckily did, we might have to sell some players like Fabio Silva. And when you're coming up against Madrid, it's always going to be tricky. And unfortunately, though we did beat them in the away leg, just got blown out of the water, and unfortunately did have to sell Silva for 100 million, which I think wasn't bad money at all. And I think in the end of the day, bit of a repeat of history, selling Martial to United all those years ago. So yeah, again, 2 years in a row we've sort of lost to the team that have actually pushed on and made quite a sort of decent campaign in the Champions League. But we had reached a final at least in the cup, so that was something to look forward to. PSG seems to continue to sign like amazing players, with Foden, Camavinga, Osimhen, all being brought in, which was a little bit scary for the game coming up. But hopefully, as a team, we might be strong enough just to get them on their day. It was a bit unfortunate Pogba is in FC25, as I think I definitely would have used him. I think he's a player that I do really like a lot. But simulating the final, we had managed to beat them on their day, so that's Trophy 2. But going into Season 4, there was a lot of expiring contracts, so we really had to be careful about who we were going to upgrade with, and who we sort of extend. Bringing in De Kuyper and now Mateta to replace an aging Grimaldo and the departure of Fabio Silva. We came back to our Super Cup in Season 4, and unfortunately wasn't the same as last year, didn't manage to get that trophy, but yeah, as you can see, we got quite good money being brought in. Bohoya being sold to United as well. United just seem to be our sponsors essentially, just funneling the money in. But yeah, we stuck with that formation for now, but I think it was something that we could potentially consider changing, especially as within 7 games we were almost out of the Champions League actually, which isn't really good at all. Checking our form elsewhere, in the League One, we were second once again, which I think when you sort of think about it, you got the likes of Foden again, Osimhen. It just sort of felt like we were just outmatched essentially, even if we were upgrading and improving every year. Monaco are a club that they're not going to just keep the best players sort of in the world. They are going to sell them on for profit. So we could try our best, and although we can beat PSG, obviously, as you've seen, yeah, I think consistently we just aren't a team that could beat them in the league at least, and sort of win the League One. In Champions League, it was Juventus-Barca final, and to recap, we hadn't really progressed that well in that competition at least. Coupe de France as well, we had managed to reach the final once again, so it was a complete repeat of sort of last season's progress. And yeah, checking the stats at the end, Castro doing quite well, maybe someone to keep an eye on. Amiri was top assister, which is very impressive. Great to see. And I think I believe there was a young player that was Javier Cohen or something, someone that we could keep an eye on. It's a good youth player. And checking the final, unfortunately Foden did manage to just take it out of our grasp there. But looking at the stats, Fati, Terrier, Amiri did very well. And it was very great to see our old sort of club, Como, had won a European competition for the first time. So yeah, I think although we hadn't progressed that well, Champions League winners of Season 4 or 5, I believe it is now, I'm not even sure what year it is, they had reached out to us and said, Cesc, come back to Barca, we need you. But looking at their squad, I don't even think they need a manager, to be honest. They seem to have a few youth players in there that are just amazing. But we thought we would stack on that, bringing in Javier Cohen alongside Leone, our old player from Como. And as well, of course, although he has signed a new 10-year contract or something, Nico Williams is an amazing player for Spain. I think he's a player that really would suit us. So we also had brought in Aït-Nouri as well, and did manage to sell a lot of players as well. Sort of looking at it, Biriath, actually, ironically, our Monaco player, we had actually sold him on again to United. which is quite funny actually. And unfortunately, all the changes we made were maybe a little bit too much at the start, which, considering we'd lost the Super Cup, meant maybe we had to strengthen even more. Bringing in Perez's favourite, or maybe his future target, Saliba, we managed to nab him out of their hands. And with that, bring in Hamida, who looked like a very good centre-back. But yeah, looking at the January Super Cup, we managed to win that. In the league progression, we were, I think, believe in second. Quarterfinals, we're of course going to be there. In Champions League, first, of course, with such a strong team that we have. Checking the stats, Rodgers and Solanke in the Liga, did not expect to see that. But yeah, in terms of both goals and assists, we seem to dominate. Salazar looking quite impressive. And just simulating through that stage, we managed to beat Marseille, as you'd expect, and beat Madrid in the league, which is good. I think those results had sort of led us to win the league. Unfortunately, couldn't win Copa de España, but great to see we kept up the form with Barca just being sort of the dominant team in Spain at least, but at least in the league phase. Checking the stats again, Nico Williams and Yamal, the dangerous duo, of course, we're going to dominate. Just like Rafinha, his predecessor, had done so, but unfortunately, I think we've joined Barca too late to get to use Rafinha, as he's quite old in real life, or sort of getting old for a winger at least. But yeah, checking contracts again. Season 6, I believe we're in now. There's quite a few sort of dwindling contracts, including Yamal. So there was something to consider in terms of who we're going to renew. Of course, Yamal had to stay, but to sort of help convince him to stay, I think Fabregas would have to give him some promises as who we're going to recruit. And considering that Isak hasn't gone to Liverpool in real life, I think it is time to bring in sort of a player with that Thierry Henry sort of aspect to him, someone that does sort of have a bit of a connection maybe with Barca, possibly like previous Swedish players just going over. And we did bring in Joan Garcia to reflect real life, sort of that they have signed him, alongside Enzo Fernandez, just to bring in some experience, as someone who is ageing and I think had quite a small sort of bit of his contract left. But yeah, Champions League in the league, we were looking very strong again. But the question was, could we just beat the big teams when it mattered at the end of the season? I think the worry, there hasn't been really any worries the first half of the year, but it's just towards the sort of business end of things. Do we have the players like Isak? Do we have those players that can just beat any team on their day? At least for the sake of the Supercopa, wasn't true. Somehow managed to lose to Las Palmas, which is pretty depressing. And our sort of rivals had managed to reach the Champions League final, which was pretty poor alongside PSG, our previous rivals. So yeah, I think there was definitely a need to bring in some more players and maybe some more depth to strengthen our ambitions and make it more likely that we can win a Champions League. As we go into the final season 7 I believe we're now, Baturina seems to have become something of a Modric regen, so we decided to bring him in as someone that could sort of play in the number 8 role, maybe more forward, just to mean that in doubt, there'll be no doubts about our sort of depth and our quality up front. Livramento as well, bringing him in, I think he's a quality right back that could really grow into a top player, so we brought him in for a bit of depth as well. And as you can say, pretty much all of our team are almost 90 rated, which is sort of raises questions as to why we're not really winning trophies. Outside of that, we decided to bring in Joan Boni from Atletico Madrid into Barcelona. He's a top player from what I've heard. Believe he's going to some other club this summer. I can't remember who it was. Was it Inter Milan? But yeah, same principle. If they're better than you and they're in the Liga, the Barca way says you have to buy them. And I think that's what Fabregas is sort of trying to implement here. But yeah, looking at the stats, pretty decent again. Not the best from Yamal compared to other years, but team of the year was dominated by us. Looking at Copa de España, Madrid took that one again. We didn't really seem to have much joy in this competition in the career mode, but Supercopa once again, I think we've almost at least been in the final basically every year. But again, just terrorised by Madrid. Don't know how we managed to play Torino in the quarters, but we unfortunately had to play Liverpool and lost them, but I think that's no excuse. We do have a team that is basically the best in the world, so I think they might just be on us at this point. Checking the final stats, Isak had a really good season alongside Nico Williams. Once again, I think that is like the best attack we could have. And with some expiring contracts, I thought this might be a more sensible place to end the career mode. 97 rated Yamal, unreal. But yeah, hopefully in real life Fabregas does have a better career down the road, but thanks for watching.